Welcome to Lubrication Across the Nation, presenting you with unique stories and conversations from across the country. We're always discussing things like working in the trades, sciences, and of course, art, but there's a lot more involved as well. So make sure to listen in. And it's all brought to you by Dynamic Green Products, DGP, bio-based, zero compromise. All right, everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of Lubrication Across the Nation. And this time I am joined by a very special guest, none other than Marc Goldberg, one of the OG DGP. And you may know him if you're out in the UCSD area. He is the tree department supervisor over there. And that is in the, correct me if I'm wrong, that is in the San Diego area, correct?
Correct. Yep.
All right, San Diego. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, Russell. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So you have been in the tree culture, if you will, for more than a few days, yeah?
My gray hair, my lack of hair is probably showing it.
But realistically, you've been in the tree environment, whether it's in landscaping and or tree care, pretty much since you were young, like some of us, right? You got into it as a side hustle when you were younger?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, 12, 13, probably, start mowing, landscaping, got in that side of it, and worked my way into tree care, and then became a certified arborist for now over 20 years. So, yeah, never. It's one of those things that I enjoyed doing, and just kind of never got away from it.
And at what point, how old were you when you decided, when you knew kind of like, okay, this is something that's not just kind of for now, it's something I want to really pursue for my life, my career?
Yeah, I went to a small school called Uni Environmental University up in Maine after I graduated high school, and I think that just confirmed that I was that I was always going to be doing something in the green industry. Just was unsure if it was going to be landscaping or landscape related. I had a really cool dendrology class up there, and it was what really changed it for me, where I was going to go in the direction of trees, and started, got in the tree care industry, on the utility lines, and then worked my way and became a certified arborist. Started jumping around in the private sector, different companies, especially out here in San Diego, and then settled my way here and working in facilities management here at UCSD, overlooking and helping a great team of arborists here, managing 26,000 trees here on campus.
That's just a little bit of a forest there you got.
We have our share of trees here for sure, so it's a great campus, definitely.
Awesome. And how long have you been there?
About a year and a half now.
Year and a half.
Yeah, I was in the private sector for many years. When I jumped out of the private sector, and as you know, I was with DGP for 6 months, and I was about 6 months, and everything was going good. And UCSD reached out, and it's one of those jobs I just couldn't turn down. I was torn. I didn't want to call Scott, obviously the owner of DGP, and tell him because I was torn. And both are just great opportunities, but they just, it was tough to get them. I couldn't do them both at the same time. So I got back into it, and it's been fun for sure.
Now, when you first, because you mentioned that you have been for quite a few years, been a certified arborist. When you first decided on that certification, was that because you were doing a job and then it was kind of the next step, or did you do that first and then use that as a catapult to a job?
Yeah, no, when I was on the utility line for a company out here in San Diego, it was an opportunity. Hey, would you be up to become a certified arborist? And I was like, yeah, that'd be pretty interesting. I became a certified arborist, and I enjoyed on the utility lines, but there was an opportunity to really get my feet wet and work with other arborists in the private sector for tree care companies, and that was my next jump from there. And then from there, it was just kind of moving through the industry from production manager to staff arborist to business development and running operations for different tree care companies here in San Diego area.
Nice. Yeah. The reason I ask is, there's a lot of guys I know that that are in landscaping, but they're wanting to get out of not necessarily get out of landscaping, but they're wanting to move a little bit away from the maintenance, the lawn maintenance side of it, and
Sure.
kind of do different things. Some of them are going into the fertilizer and pest control side of it. Some are going into irrigation and everything. But I have a few friends who have kind of been back and forth over the years on whether they want to go into the arborist side of things. And I think it's kind of like for especially for the younger guys, some of them it's like a big scary monster to them. You know, when you hear certification, but then you think of this one where the arborist is not something where you take a weekend course and then you're a certified arborist by any
Correct.
means, of course. So for you getting into it, having been into it as long as you have, because obviously there's continuing education that you do throughout your career and everything with it, but for someone who's thinking about it and has been thinking about it, perhaps, hey, maybe I can get into the tree care side. Do I do arborist or do I just kind of, go and cut some limbs off a tree and call it good?
No, no.
Right, right.
Please don't. No, I would. I've encouraged people throughout my career to study arboriculture, to find a mentor in this industry, no matter if they're in landscape and they want to stay in landscape, or they want to grow and grow and move their way into tree care. Is find someone with similar values, and that you can learn from, that you want to learn from, and just read and just go out there and make those mistakes, and learn from them, right? And don't be afraid to fail, right? I mean, I know people say that a lot, but it's so true, right? Like I've lost track of how many times I fell over, but it's just you got to get up, right? And just keep chasing, and you learn from the people around you. And that's why I love the tree care industry. There really is, especially here in San Diego. I've had some really great mentors, and I wouldn't be where I'm at without those mentors. And then to surround myself to this day with people who I consider really great arborists, who I consider better arborists than me, people I can learn from. And that's how you get better, right? Don't be afraid. Don't walk around and think that you know everything, number one. Number two, don't be afraid to fail. Um, and just learn from people around you. And that's what makes it fun every day. Tree care, you can go to work every day and you're going to learn something. You're going to learn a lot. And there's no day that's the same day as the day before. And that's why I'm still doing it, because I'm obviously passionate about trees, passionate about the environment, and passionate about keeping an urban forest healthy and just being part of it. It humbles you a lot.
So, and you made, a good point there that as far as the learning from other people in the industry, we tend to do that in many different industries. One of the things that was interesting to me when I was recently at the TCI Expo in St. Louis, it was my first time being at that expo, that particular trade show, but really the first time I had been around kind of the arborist culture, really, for the most part. I've been a landscaper for many years, but and did mainly as far as when it came to trimming, it was that limb's dead, it needs to come down, or doing shrubs and things of that nature, some ornamental pruning, things like that, but not really what I would call like true tree care, by any means. And so it was really interesting to me just to be around and hear some of the conversations and see like a lot of the people who were coming from all over, not only all over the country but all over the world to this expo. And people were, from across the hall. They're like, "Oh, hey, Brian," and they were like, "Oh, Bob," and and they're going and hugging each other, and they've never actually met in person. They've only heard of each other's, backgrounds and things, and especially with social media nowadays, it's a lot easier to connect, that way. But they had heard of these people, these different people, and had been watching their work, and so it was just really cool to see that, because you don't see that in a lot of places. You don't really see that culture of, oh, that guy really knows his rope work, or this guy really knows his saws and things of that nature. So, and I'm sure that you've seen that over the course of your career.
Yeah, the industry is really welcoming. The industry, like everybody I met that was younger than me, and they were willing to listen. I'm willing to teach as much as the folks that were older than me that I learned from that are retired out. They were more than happy to share their knowledge. And I think now I'm at a place in my, where I'm at now at my age where you want to, you want to find someone who's younger and you want to, or the same age or whatnot, who wants to learn from you that you can pass that on, right? And that's the goal is just to have a next generation that can take care of our urban forests, right? It doesn't make sense for any arborist to move on and not share that knowledge.
Yeah, it is a conundrum, isn't it? You spend all as much time as you can learning as much as you can, and then you're kind of like, okay, what do I do with this? Like,
I try to find people who want to listen to
right?
me is what I
Yeah.
do.
You get to that certain age, and you kind of go, okay, I've amassed a certain amount of knowledge, and of course, you can always learn more. As you said, you learn, every day. But
Yeah.
then you're kind of like, okay, I need to do something with this knowledge other than using it for me daily. Like, where does it go? Where's the outlet? And
100%.
I think, for you being in the environment you are, I mean, you're working around a place of learning on a daily basis. So does that help in that aspect?
It's unique. I've never, when I was in the private sector for over 20 years here in San Diego County, one of the things was unique. It was master HOAs, commercial properties, Class A commercial properties, high-end residences, golf courses, you can name it. I had the opportunity to walk these great properties. UCSD is its own planet, and it's beautiful. And to have an opportunity just to work with a great group of people who are all smarter than me on staff, and then to be surrounded by probably, I think, some of the smartest people in the world. My job every day is to make sure the campus looks good and the trees are safe for all these great people that are doing great things for the world. And it's humbling for sure. It's for me, it's motivating. It's been fun for sure.
Well, and have you seen a change in your time as an arborist? Have you seen a change in how people interact with the environment from, I mean, and apart from, just people saying like we need to be greener, and climate
Sure.
change and other things, but just in your day to day, have you seen kind of any kind of shift that you've noticed,
Um,
especially in an urban environment?
yeah, I think it depends of the urban environment you're in. Um, I guess it really it's tough to say. I've seen I've seen mass destruction of tree plantings. I've seen a lot of stuff done to newly planted trees. Um, I've seen to see more trash than I ever have out in the landscape, and not just here where I'm at on campus, but throughout. Um, there seems to be a side of people that at some level just don't respect it anymore. We're almost coming detached at some level. I mean, I can link this. I know I don't want to run it around, but I remember when I was about 20 years ago when I first got in the industry, my kids were really young, and I had the pleasure of going to their schools for 4 or 5 years. When they're in fourth, fifth grade,
Hmm.
and I would show up with burlaps and montas of pine cones and lemons and oranges and leaves and all this great stuff. And I would go talk about photosynthesis, right? And it was an urban school, an urban environment, and it would take me, I had, we'll just say 100 pounds of just branches and fruit and all this stuff. I'd go into the classroom and I did 2 or 3 lectures and talks to the kids. When I left there, all I had was my cart. There was the kids, these kids never saw a pine cone, didn't know what a pine cone was, a lemon, like this grows on a tree. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but as we're getting more sophisticated, we're also getting more detached from the landscape and from the environment. I think that's what I've seen the most from when I became an arborist at first to now is the detachment in our younger generation. And not with intentionality, but um, you know, this generation is locked up to their phones and tablets, and that's not a great thing. It's not a bad thing, but there's definitely things suffering because of that. And I think that's the way people relate to the environment at some level.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree. I think with the and you say technology can be a great thing, but you got to use it wisely, And there's just so many times where I see folks, going when I go out hiking, I'm in the woods and you see folks they're out walking around that they're taking pictures or taking video, which is fine, you want those memories. But I'm kind of like, okay, put it down and see it with your own eyes, instead of that 3-inch screen in front of your face.
Russell, 100%. Just shut everything off and just listen, right? And just look. When before I wrote my book, I was up in northern New Hampshire. I went to see a friend I haven't seen for like 20 years, and shame on me for not seeing him. And I said, I just, I need a reboot. And I went up to northern New Hampshire, and I'm in the middle of the forest, and I just listened and I just watched. And what a reboot that was. And I think everybody should do it because it really does put life in perspective, for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for that. And well, and speaking of the book, I can put it up to the screen
Oh,
here.
thank
We
you.
have that there. There we go. Although I don't have my mirror thing on, but you all get the idea. An arborist point of view from under the canopy, which is it's a great well, for one thing, it's a great title of a book. Um, love, but the thing I love about the book is that so it's just kind of I don't know. I can see that it's a kind of a collection because so first and foremost, it's a collection of quotes, and there's some poetry in there as well for those interested in it. It is not a technical manual on how to properly prune an apple tree, but I think if once reading it though, like I could see myself thinking of some of these quotes as I'm doing that kind of work, So so in a way, it does help, but. If you could kind of explain your thoughts on the book here as far as how you did it, but for what I was going to say is that as I was reading it, it almost seemed like it was you could see a transition forward. It started off in one place and it was just kind of it was a collection of quotes to me, but it was also kind of this journey, so to speak. So could you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. No, I appreciate it, Russell. Yeah, I mean, I tell people it's a book, not all about trees, but I couldn't have written it if it wasn't for trees. And it's, I've been, for some reason or not, I've been writing since I've been 13, 14 years old, and I just been I was collecting stuff on receipts, cardboard, whatever, scrap paper, and I was sticking all these quotes or ideas into a file. And kind of when I went, in my early 50s and then about 52 or so, close friend passed away, and unfortunately that was the trigger that said, what are you waiting for? And I and I was kind of in the hills of New Hampshire at the time, and I came back to California, and I started taking all those scrap papers out and I threw them down on the bed, and I just started typing away and just started putting the quotes in there, and just to get people out there. I kind of envision it as the new coffee table book, and a book to be read and reread, and I hope it inspires people. And it's tough. I tell people it's like running around, unclothed. It was really tough. I think that's what really kept me from writing a book was you really do put yourself out there, and you got to be okay with it. I probably wouldn't have been okay with it, and I wasn't obviously okay with it until I got to about 50 or so. And then at that point I was like, I'm just going to do it, So,
Yeah.
and I'm glad I did,
Well, no, and I'm glad you did too. It's a great book. I highly recommend it for anybody out there who's looking for just like you said, a coffee table book, a book that you can pick up, just as you said, and look through it. In fact, I was reading through it this morning with my morning cup of coffee, just kind of checking it out again. And then rather than picking up and going from page one to the end, I was just kind of, open it to random page read and then open it to another random page and just kind of scan the pages. And it was just fun. Like it's fun. So there was a couple that I marked. I did mark a couple as I was reading this morning, knowing we were going to be talking. But there was one quote you said, "A walk in an urban forest shows the true grit of a tree."
Yeah. 100%.
And I love that because there's so much about that is so true. And you don't really think about it until you read that quote. And you kind of start thinking about it, and there's all these different things that go through your mind of, like, man, there's, and I started thinking about it because I took my son to the park today, and we were running around, and I was just kind of like checking out the trees that are right next to the street, so you got these roots that are banged up against the sidewalk, and then on 2 feet on the other side, they're banged against the asphalt, or you could see the asphalt lifting. But in your expertise with the urban forest side of things, I mean, you see that, you're seeing that on a daily basis, obviously, when you're, and especially on the campus side of things. But for those who don't quite know what the definition of what an urban forest was, or is, I should say, what to you is an urban forest?
Yeah, I mean, an urban forest is a forest that was planted by man, that was created by man. Unfortunately, at some level, created for the purpose of the landscape, not necessarily for the tree. Um, and what the goal of it, obviously, of an urban forest, right, is that it's there, to absorb carbon dioxide, to have photosynthesis, to bring aesthetics to the landscape. But sometimes the trees, it's not in the best interest of the tree, and those trees are tough. Sometimes the wrong tree was planted in the wrong location, and if you see that in utilities, you see that with a tree. I want a large tree next to this building, but it shouldn't really be there. The infrastructure below doesn't allow that, for roots really to thrive. Trees on some slopes sometimes, they're getting a lot of water, so they don't have what we call the root shoot ratio, so the roots aren't too deep, but the tree's real tall because it's getting water, so we have problems there.
The
So there's
homeowner wanted a
challenges.
specific one in their yard, even though it won't actually grow in their yard.
Right, right. We do a lot of things that we probably shouldn't with trees, but to me, that's an urban forest. So obviously different in a true traditional forest that God created, that Mother Nature created, that the wind created, and those trees all thrive, and they communicate with each other either through their roots or through when they open their stomata and they close it, and the sense they let go. A true forest really acts naturally without any man help, and they work with each other. Yet in an urban setting, an urban forest really needs man to assist in it for it to thrive at some level. So a lot of similarities, a lot of differences. I think sometimes if you get into a park setting that doesn't have too many vehicles and stuff like that, large parks, and you're growing different species and stuff, you can have a forest that starts to act a little bit less like an urban forest and starts to act like a traditional forest. But usually in urban settings, the trees are acting without any assistance from other trees. And that's challenging because when you put a bunch of trees together, they really work well together. Their roots graft and they feed each other and they help each other. A little bit different in a traditional urban setting, for sure, urban forest.
So, what's the area you're in charge of and maintaining? What's one of your biggest struggles there, as far as that diversity and the
Sure.
trying to make everything work?
Yeah, no, I think the challenge, especially on a large urban campus, is you want to hold as many mature trees as possible, older trees. Um, Obviously, we need to build new infrastructure. Um, how do you create spaces that you can protect older trees? How can you create areas where the trees are not being struck by vehicles or uh, trees that are we're planting the right trees in the right location. So our planters on campus do a really good job picking the right species and then having our contractors come in and plant those species. Um, but it is challenging in an urban setting to create trees that are place trees in the right location and then to maintain them. Trees at a young age in an urban setting really need structural pruning. You need to go in there and really make sure that, and not even at that point before the structural pruning, we're getting trees and we're inspecting before they're put in the ground. So we're kind of that layer there. When a tree gets delivered, I'm the guy they don't want to see. I'm the short guy with a big hard hat with a vest going, no, that tree's no good. Why not? It's fine. Well, it's actually not. Unfortunately, during delivery process, trees get damaged to the point where you can't plant them. They're not going to be it's going to cause more problems down the road for us here on campus. So we try to be proactive in that sense before the tree's even put in the ground. Work with a great urban forester here on campus, Mike Hogan, who does a really good job on explaining to our contractors how the trees really need to be planted correctly. So when they're planted, they're not planted too deep, that they're planted, that they're healthy. So we have these trees for the next, 60, 80, 100 years, right? And it starts when they're planted and we're putting the right species in. So the campus has done a really good job with that. the challenges in urban setting is just, managing that many trees. And managing on a college campus is challenging because if you're studying medicine at the School of Medicine here, we'll say, for example, and you're taking a test, the last thing you want to do is hear a chainsaw and a chipper. So we are very creative here on campus on finding very small windows of opportunity to prune those trees. So our busy season is summer break and Christmas break, weekend stuff. Early morning starts. So we have to be creative because at the end of the day, UCSD is here for the students, and our job is to provide a healthy urban forest. And we got to do that around the student population. So it's definitely challenging and it's fun at the same time.
Yeah, you're there when everyone else is enjoying their time off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when everybody else on vacation, we'll be here. I can guarantee.
So you said you've been there about a year and a half. How far out are you mentally with those grounds? Like as far, because trees take a long time. So you're like, what are you, like 10, 20, 30, 40 feet, years out? Like, yeah, this one will look good in another decade or so, or two or three.
Yeah. No, there's a funny photo I saw a while back where it's a grandfather with their son planting a tree, right? It's a small, and then, it's 40 years later and it's the son now, the grandson's now 50 or 60 with his son, right? And yeah, I mean, most arborists, we don't see, what that canopy is going to look like, in 40 or 50 years from now. But we know if we put it there, it's going to provide that shade that area needs, right? So our job is ongoing. We got to maintain those trees and make sure that they get to that point, and the next generation keeps taking care of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's well, and you're well on the way because you're already have that mindset of trying to, share that knowledge, pass it on, which is awesome because that's what we need in this, in this industry as a continuing thing, because not only sharing that knowledge, but passing along that love of this industry to others as well, right? It's not just something you wake up and you go and you punch your clock and then you punch out at the end of the day. It's, I'm sure you probably lay awake at night sometimes picturing things, or well, you probably go to sleep picturing them too. You probably dream about the trees as well.
Yeah. I think about trees too much. I have a very patient wife who listens to my tree stories. But yeah, no, I'm always comparing stuff to trees. So, I have 5 kids, and they're all doing different things. And so far, we don't have an arborist out of those 5, but maybe, but I don't. I think I've scared them out of. They don't have the passion, I guess, but they love the environment, but they just don't have that passion. So I can't force.
You never know. You never know.
Yeah. Let's hope. Let's hope.
Speaking of tree things, I wanted to get your thoughts on, of course, on DGP a little bit. As I said, you were in the beginning, you were one of the OG DGPs
Sure.
out there, so you know it well. But right before that, though, I want to do a quick little speed round, if you will. Just a couple of quick questions I had for you about trees and you. So nothing crazy, but
Okay.
So first one, favorite tree. What's your favorite tree?
Largosturmia indica, crepe myrtle tree.
All right. Got a lot of those where I am at.
Yeah, they're beautiful. And just for the record, my daughter's name is Indica. She says I named her after marijuana. That's not the case. I'm just throwing it out there. She was named after a tree, but she does call herself Indy. She says too many people make fun of her name. I said it's a beautiful name. Don't worry about it.
I got you.
Largosturmia indica.
I get, it's California. I understand.
Yeah.
So that was the favorite. What's your least favorite tree?
You know, I would say African sumac roost species, at least in an urban setting. I love bees. A roost species is great. Do not put it next to a sidewalk, please. It's going to destroy a sidewalk. And do not put it near a pool area because it's going to bring bees in. So we love bees, but again, it's planting the right tree in the right location. So nothing wrong with a roost. I don't want all the roost haters, African sumac saying, "Hey, they're great trees," but they need a lot of work. So it's not the ideal tree in most of the urban settings I've been in.
Gotcha. Well, and that was a good. I hadn't thought about the bee side of things either, so
Yeah.
that makes sense. We got next. What would you say that most in your experience in your travels, I should say, that most urban forests are lacking more so than others? Like you see a good urban forest, you're like, yeah, this is a good one. Then you go to another one, you're like, that's. Is there a constant theme that you see?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, it depends who you ask. In urban settings, man has to play a factor in the sense of pruning at some level. And it could be basic structural pruning. Um, but the trees in urban settings that do not do well are the trees that are just not maintained. And then they start to break out and they cause other problems. So, um, for many reasons, but yeah, you need it's maintenance. It's going in there and understanding just the maintenance is the back end of it. It's really the best urban forests are the ones that are planned out strategically with mixed species that are planted in the right location, trees that aren't going to outgrow their planting size and their location. It really starts from the beginning, which is the planting stage for sure.
Gotcha. And last question:
Okay.
which season is your favorite, spring or fall?
Oh, fall. I mean, I don't see the seasons out here as much, obviously, in San Diego, right? But I'll just say growing up, shout out to Mansfield, Massachusetts, where I grew up. Um, yeah, no, I mean, September when the leaves start changing, and when I was at college, Environmental University, and those leaves start changing, oh man, there's nothing like it for sure.
Yeah, I think when I came back from TCI last week, I drove in. I think I got to the house, back to the house around 3 a.m. And I pulled into the driveway, and there must have been, I swear, there was like 2 feet of leaves.
They're
And
ready.
I had just cleared leaves before I left because I didn't want to
Yeah,
come home to a bunch of, and we got that cold snap that came through last week in this area, and just, yeah, it was like everything, the trees just kind of like sneezed, and all
there you go.
all the leaves fell.
That's
It
funny.
was it was crazy, but it was beautiful. Actually, I took some pictures of the park I was going to send to you that you might like that from all the different colors of some of the trees that are still at the local park that haven't fallen yet. That
Okay.
kind of really cool trees. But yeah, I also love fall. I love fall until it's all fallen, and then I start missing. I kind of miss it, especially
Yeah.
in the area. I mean, coming from Alaska originally, and then down into
Mm.
Washington State. With all the evergreens,
Yeah.
and then you get it's still I still don't get used to fall as far as I don't get winter like blues, but I do get some kind of, like, I don't know, like whatever it may be, but there towards spring, I'm so happy to see the buds start coming out
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's that like few weeks, when it's just before where I'm just like, okay, the trees are looking like skeletons. Let's get some life back into things. But I do love the transition though, that's for sure. That is for
Yeah. I
sure.
love the seasons for sure. Yeah.
So we've got just a couple minutes here in kind of in the closing side of things.
Yeah.
You you are very familiar with DGP, and of course
Yeah.
here we are talking on the Lubrication Across the Nation podcast for Dynamic Green Products. Um, Tell us a little bit about your experience with DGP.
Sure. No, I mean, we were talking earlier. It's just, and I had the pleasure of you know, telling people about it and went to a trade show and really get my feet wet before I left DGP to come over to University of California, San Diego. And one of the easiest things about DGP and what's great and what I still don't understand about the tree care industry, especially in the United States, is the fact that we're using petroleum products in a bar and chain oil. It makes no sense. It's an environmental mess to just throw oil down on the ground of a landscape that we're trying to maintain. Um, and that part of it was the part that was just easy to tell people, hey, not just for the environment. Well, obviously, numerous reasons for the environment, for the user, that they're not breathing in all this petroleum, that they're actually breathing in, um, a non-petroleum product, right? Um, and at the same time, it's biodegradable. Um, it, and we use it here on campus because when you're in the industry for, if you're using chain for 20, 25 years, it's probably not a good thing to breathe in petroleum every day in small mists. Now, I know some people don't want to hear that, but that to me, that's factual. So to have a product that gives some an alternative, and DGP has a product like that, obviously, bar and chain oil, and then a product that in my opinion, has outperformed any of the petroleum products I've used in the industry since I've been, an arborist. It was an easy go-to. It was easy for me to present to people, and it's an easy product. And I know for us to use on campus, it's great for our environment here on campus, and it's also good for our facilities management team as well.
And if there's so, and you mentioned it kind of right as you started, but you don't understand why anyone wouldn't use it. For those, I mean, you've been pretty much lifetime arborist, lifelong arborist. For anybody listening out there who's saying, well, it's bar oil, what does it matter?
Yeah.
And not just for the health benefit of people themselves, but you dealing with that forestry, that urban forestry especially. What does that mean to you when someone says that?
When they say they don't want to use it, it usually comes down to price point, and then which is really it's pennies at the end of the day. I mean, um, it's look. I have no problem with petroleum, but at the end of the day, it's probably not good to be spraying it all over the place into our landscape, and it's not good to breathe it in every day. And that's factual. So if you're on a chainsaw every day, and there's a product out there that's safer to use and also better for the environment, and it's going to outperform the traditional bar and chain oils, then it's really a no-brainer. I know it's easy for me to say that, that I was on the other side of the things, that I was on the DGP side of things, but all that's factual. I think sometimes it's just tough. We we humans are stubborn, right? Especially folks in the tree care industry, right? But it's a great product. Just try it. I mean, one thing which I loved when I went to the trade show in St. Louis a couple years back with DGP was the fact that Scott and DGP were just handing out the product. Go use it. You let me know. And I followed up with folks afterwards, and they were like, yeah, let's do it. Let's figure this out. I need to get a hold of this stuff. And the orders started to come in. It sells itself, and I think eventually bar and chain oil, especially in the United States and the other countries in Europe, they don't allow petroleum bar and chain oil. In the United States, they still do. And it could be many reasons why. But at the end of the day, DGP's head in the right direction, the product's the real deal, and it's definitely better for the end user for many reasons. So love to seeing DGP over the last couple of years get momentum is awesome to see for sure.
Yeah, it is definitely something that everyone needs to look at, and once again, we're lagging behind Europe when it comes to
Yeah,
the things that make sense. But it's true. There's no reason not to, and as you said, it's pennies on the dollar really when it comes down to it, and it's something that you should do not only for yourself but just for every day, and the what ifs, of what if I hadn't done that for 20 years? would I feel better now?
No, 100%. Not sure if it's a good comparison, but like when I first got in the industry, personal protective equipment, PPE, hearing protection wasn't a big thing. If you wore it, you don't need it. Come on, just right. I'm one of those people where like, it's okay. I don't need it. The chipper's only on for 20 minutes or an hour, right? Well, as I'm speaking to you now, my volume isn't maxed out, but it's pretty loud here. I wear hearing aids.
Yeah, so I've got
I made bad decisions. And I think at some level, breathing in a petroleum-based bar and chain oil over the long term can't be good for you, And if someone's in the industry as a professional, they should really consider at least trying it and changing it. And the messaging from DGP is very accurate. It's very honest. Gives people opportunity to try it out. And I think once someone tries it, I've talked to numerous guys out here in Southern California, San Diego. They've switched and they won't even look back,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, Marc, thank you so much for joining me for this. I know you've got busy times here. Well, I don't know, do you even have seasons in San Diego? I don't.
Most people don't think we do, but I can feel that. Yeah, we're going to get some rain here starting tomorrow, so that's a big thing for us. So yeah, we get seasons, but you're from Alaska, so I don't want to even talk to you about seasons. You'll laugh me out of the office, you know.
It's all good. It's all good. Thank you so much for coming on. An arborist point of view from under the canopy. Make sure you check it out. Where can they purchase this, Mark? This book?
Yeah, uh, many places online. Just go straight to Amazon. It's on Amazon, really easy. And I can send you the link too, Russell, if you want to share it.
Perfect. Yeah, that'd be great. And remember, folks, speaking of links, changeyouroil.com to find out about any of the DGP products, because we are bio-based and zero compromise. Thank you so much, my special guest, Marc Goldberg. And stay tuned, folks, because we're going to have many more stories to share here on Lubrication Across the Nation.